Hi there, and a very warm welcome to Season 6, Episode 34 of People Soup. It's Ross McIntosh here. Pea Soupers, today it's another cuppa soup, a short episode where I continue reflecting on change. Last week I talked about the challenge of change. This week I'm looking back at how we used to work. I'm taking a pause and travelling back to 1991, when I had my first proper job in the UK civil service. Now, it's fair to say the pace of change has picked up over the last 30 years in terms of change at work, and these days AI seems to be everywhere. But when you look back at the workplaces of the early 90s, there are things that make me think, good Lord, can you believe it used to be like that? So this week I'm sharing a few memories from my first job in the UK civil service. And these include ashtrays, typing pools and microfiche. Listen on to hear more. I'd also love to hear your memories too. Together, maybe we can build a People Soup audio time capsule to show progress, reflect on change, and have a few laughs along the way. Thanks for tuning in, folks. People Soup is a podcast that mixes stories, science, and a sprinkle of daftness to explore what helps people thrive at work and beyond. Our mission is to give you, the listener, the ingredients for a better work life through insights and stories grounded in behavioural science, especially acceptance and commitment therapy and other evidence-based approaches. Before we go on, let's take a quick scoot over to the news desk. The ACBS UK and Republic of Ireland conference is nearly upon us. It runs from the 14th to the 16th of November in Manchester. The theme this year is pollination. Innovation through connection, and you'll find the details of the programme and keynote speakers in the show notes. And on Thursday the 23rd of October, I'm excited to be joining Joe Oliver for a live online Q&A, all about using ACT in the workplace. We'll be talking about introducing ACT to organisations, how to get leader buy-in, how to weave ACT into your facilitation, and those vital first steps. And I hope to see some of you there. So for now, get a brew on, and let's dive into my reflections on how we used to work. So, let's rewind to 1991. After exams and interviews, I joined the UK civil service. Chuffed to bits I was. My first posting was in the Home Office Immigration Department, which was based in Croydon, just south of London. After a few weeks' training, I was released into a caseworking group. I'd opted for a non-smoking environment. I found out what this really meant on my first day. Although it was labelled non-smoking, in reality it meant that less than half the people in the office smoked. That was a bit of a shock. They smoked at their desks, when they were on the phone, with these enormous glass ashtrays. You'd often open a paper file and find a sprinkling of fag ash inside, which was a delight. This was the smell of bureaucracy in the early 90s. Paper, smoke, ink for passport stamps, and instant coffee. And when we're thinking about how far the workplace has come, there were no computers on our desks. Everything was paper files. There was a telephone on my desk, and above each desk were shelves for the ever-growing mountain of files. My work involved considering requests for people to extend their stay in the UK. Maybe they'd met the love of their life whilst here as a visitor and got married. Maybe they were seeking some more time as a student in the UK, or perhaps seeking to enter the UK from abroad as a person of independent means. These applications involved me seeking and reviewing evidence, like marriage photos, and then making a decision. It was very interesting work, especially the marriage interviews, which involved interviewing the husband and wife separately, like an episode of Mr. and Mrs. or the film Green Card. Anyway, if you can imagine a world without a computer on your desk, try imagining a world without email. What a joy! If you wanted to get a message to someone, perhaps you might pick up the phone, or write a minute in a file and then send them the whole file via the messengers. Imagine that. Or, of course, you could get up and walk over and speak to someone. We wrote lots of letters. Some letters were written by hand, filling in the spaces on a typed template, using carbon paper for the copy on the file. We didn't have to put our phone extension on the letters, or our names, so we could just sign the letter with a squiggle. Not really much focus on customer service or accountability in those days. Other handwritten letters were sent to the typing pool, and the clatter of typewriters echoed down the corridor. That was the sound of work. Another feature of the office was, and I can hardly believe I'm saying this, a subsidised bar on the 19th floor. I'm not sure this bar contributed enormously to productivity in the workplace. Then there were the annual reports. These were a big deal and contained your rating for the year, something along the lines of exceeded requirements, fully met requirements, partially met requirements, or not met requirements. Of course, we were all trying to aim for exceeded requirements. And I remember the disappointment in my first report when I received the marking of partially met requirements. What a downer that was. There was also an assessment of our likelihood for promotion, and the categories here were fully fitted for promotion, likely to become fitted for promotion within 2 years, or not fitted. This report was a document of about 20 pages, I guess, but we were only allowed to read the front page with our personal details, our overall rating for the year, and our likelihood for promotion. Can you believe that's all we were allowed to read? Can you imagine that now? Your whole year summarised in a document you weren't even allowed to read. It kind of blows my mind. Let's go back to computers. When I first joined, there was one computer terminal per floor, and this was to check microfiche records for every landing card that had been filled in by a foreign national entering the UK. There was quite a knack to operating this, and it was quite a cumbersome system. You had to select the day of their arrival and then find the relevant cassette to load into the machine. Still on computers, a couple of years in, I got involved in something that felt very cutting edge, training people on a new file tracking system. Up until then, we'd used a card-based index system to track the movement of files, but now each file was going to have a barcode. So when a file moved between offices, you'd scan it with a wand-like barcode reader, pop it in the out tray, and a messenger would collect it and send it on its way. When it reached its location, the barcode would be scanned again, creating a record of the file movements. Each office was getting one computer terminal, complete with barcode wand and a mouse. I was tasked with supporting the rollout of the training. I was given the learning objectives and asked to design a hands-on course, 12 learners at a time, each with a terminal, a mouse and a barcode wand. And I'll never forget one woman who arrived for the training. She was full of enthusiasm, eager to show her colleagues what she knew. Once she was settled in her chair, she carefully picked up the mouse, placed it on the floor, and positioned her foot above it, ready to operate it like a sewing machine treadle. She looked up and smiled proudly and said, "Right, I'm ready." Isn't that a beautiful illustration of the workplace context and how we can apply what we know already to new things? That moment has stayed with me, a tiny snapshot of those early days of digital change. Everyone's trying to adapt, learn, and make sense of the new, and sometimes they plant their foot in the wrong place. Finally, let's talk about individual officers. When I first joined, the person 2 grades above me had their own office, and I had to address him as Mr. Blackstone. The person the grade above Mr. Blackstone had a vast office, and if he was coming to visit our caseworking group for a walkabout, it was like a royal event. We had to polish our desks. In my civil service career, I rose above both of these grades in the hierarchy, but never, alas, had my own office. Looking back, it all feels like another world. The smell of smoke in the air, the hum of typewriters, the clunk of filing cabinet drawers. But underneath it all, perhaps the heart of work hasn't changed that much. It was still about people doing their best, navigating change, solving problems, and occasionally sneaking off to the 19th floor for a pint of courage. And it's funny, isn't it? At the time, it all just felt normal. That's the thing about change. It can sneak up on you. One day you're typing with carbon paper. The next you're asking ChatGPT to write your annual report. But underneath all that, it's always been about people, connection, and adapting together. I'd love to hear from you, Pea Supers. What was your first workplace like? What strange habits, rules, or rituals do you remember? Maybe you had an office bar too, or maybe just a dodgy vending machine. Sadly, when I joined, I just missed the era of the tea lady with a large urn on a trolley. That's one thing I think the modern workplace could consider reintroducing. You can share your stories with me by email at peoplesoup.pod@gmail.com or on the socials, Instagram, LinkedIn or Blue Sky. Let's build a People Soup time capsule to show how far we've come and maybe give ourselves a good chuckle along the way. That's it, Pea Soupers, my reflections on how we used to work in the bag. You'll find the show notes for this episode at peoplesoup.captivate.fm or wherever you get your podcasts. Now more than ever, you can help me reach more people with the special People Soup ingredients, stuff that could be really useful for them. So please do share, subscribe, rate and review. Thanks to Andy Glenn for his spoon magic and Alex Engelberg for his vocals. But most of all, thanks to you, dear listener. Look after yourselves, Pea Soupers, and bye for now. She carefully picked up the mouse, placed it on the floor, and positioned her foot above it, ready to operate it like a sewing machine treadle. She looked up and smiled proudly and said, "Right, I'm ready."